Hello and welcome to Think Like a Game Designer. I'm your host, Justin Gary. In this podcast, I'll be having conversations with brilliant game designers from across the industry with a goal of finding universal principles that anyone can apply in their creative life. You could find episodes and more at thinklikeagamedesigner.com. In today's episode, I speak with Carly McGinnis. Carly is the CEO of Exploding Kittens. Under McGinnis, Exploding Kittens has sold over 25 million tabletop games with over 30 launch titles. She is largely responsible for growing that company, raising over $40 million in capital, growing an international business. Today's podcast is a master class in leadership and rapid scaling of a tabletop company. They've recently celebrated their 10-year anniversary after launching the crowdfund that still is to this date the most backed crowdfund in history. And it is an incredible process to get to see what's happening behind the scenes. Now, I have two podcast episodes I've done in the past, which I will link in the show notes, with Elan Lee, which is one of the creators of Exploding Kittens. And we get a lot of the details of the creative process through Elan. But Carly is the engine that runs this ship behind the scenes. She's the one that helps build the processes, make sure that those promises that get made from a crowdfund actually get delivered to backers, and growing an international corporation. This is a really fascinating deep dive into what's important. And her background is really, really interesting. She came from the entertainment space, working as an assistant to an Ari Gold type character, if you ever saw the show Entourage, and had to suffer quite a bit of abuse, learned a lot of lessons in resilience. We see how that shows itself throughout her process of growing this company and facing the challenges through COVID, through a variety of failed projects. We learn about her hiring process. We learn about how you define good enough and how you manage people, how you give different feedback to a leadership team, how you actually lead a team and build a company culture. We talk about the future of Exploding Kittens and what is in store for them. Spoiler alert, it might be an Exploding Kittens theme park. We dig into a lot of incredible things. We have specific book recommendations, specific processes. This was something that I really needed to hear myself. And it was clear that Carly, even as she was talking, was reminding herself of key lessons, which is one of the really important parts that I've learned over the years about leadership. And Carly reinforces that so much of it is repetition and reminding yourself of the things that matter and continuing to do the things and show up the same way. That's one of the reasons why I love having these kinds of conversations, because it helps reinforce the most important lessons for me and for you as a listener, right? So this is just one of those things where listening here will find gold nuggets for you, not necessarily about the specifics of the design process, but about how you can build something that lasts, how you can build a team and execute on a vision. Carly is so much fun. She's really entertaining. We have a great time during the conversation. So without any further ado, here is Carly McGinnis. Hello and welcome. I am here with Carly McGinnis. Carly, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Hello, Justin. Thank you for having me.
So, first of all, previous guest, Elan Lee has spoken very highly about you, but that wasn't why I wanted you on the podcast. I wanted you on the podcast because we met at Gen Con and it had immediately hit it off, and your warmth and humor and personality disarmed me. And then I realized who you were, and I was like, okay, this is going to be a great guest. I want to dig in. So you've grown probably the fastest growing tabletop game presence of any company in history, as far as I know. Certainly, I think you've got like something like 60 launch titles now with Exploding Kittens, something absurd like that.
That sounds right.
And that's over 10 year. You're just celebrating your 10-year anniversary of the biggest or the most backed crowdfund campaign still to this date. Is that right?
Yeah, that's accurate.
Okay, so we're going to dig into a lot of that stuff, but I want to know about you. I want to know, I know you were at Xbox before this, but like what got you like into this field? Like you're not the typical game company executive. I want to know a little bit about your origin story. I want to know what makes you tick here. So what bring me back as far in the Wayback Machine as you want to go.
Okay. So I started in Hollywood, actually. I started as an assistant. You ever seen the show Entourage?
Oh, I love that show. Yeah.
Back in the day. Okay. So basically I worked for the the agent Ari. It was like my, representation of what I was doing. I was an assistant in Hollywood. So it taught me how to be resourceful. It taught me how to just deal with multiple personalities, many of them being difficult personality types. And it also taught me that I did not want to be in that industry for very much longer. And so I went from working at talent agencies to meeting a guy named Elan Lee, actually.
Hold on, wait. I want to pause there because there's interesting things to unpack. So is this the actual, is this like a character just like the one that in the show Entourage, or is this the one that the character was based on, the actual guy?
Okay, so I did not work. Yes, so he is based off a real guy named Ari. I did not work for Ari, but I worked for his, fellow board member at William Morris Endeavor. Yes, so
now
I worked for the guys running the agencies.
All right, now I don't know how much of our audience has seen this show, but like this character, I mean, he's hilarious to watch as a viewer, but he is so abusive to his staff in this show, and so someone who is playing in real life the role of staff, that sounds a little rough. There's got to be some kind of story or some kind of thing there that's like either a particularly ridiculous or interesting story from that moment, or a little bit more about your character that put you in that position in the first place.
Do you remember the character Lloyd, who was his assistant?
Yes.
I don't know if you remember that. So that was basically what I did. I would sit there answering phones. You would work from 6 a.m. till sometimes midnight, almost every day. And it's a great job out of college because it really gives you perspective on what it's like. I mean, this is like the upper echelon of this business. And on top of that, that's just who you're working for. You're also servicing all these different A-level clients. So I got exposure to all of that. I think. I won't name some names of the people I worked for, but there was a lot of toxic, abuse, and it was an industry, I think, that taught you resilience, and that is one of the words that describes me till this day. So I think that I have learned so much about what I have an assistant today, and I feel like I'm a very nice boss because I don't want to pass on the trauma that I endured basically during this time. And I worked with some really lovely people and some real, some friends, some colleagues that we're still friends today because you're in these trenches and you're just trying to figure out how to. For example, I had one person that I worked for who we sent out like thousands of greeting cards for Christmas every year. And I would be like, stamping and stickering and licking. I don't know why I was licking, but the envelopes, like until I had cuts on my mouth. Because that's what they would have done, right? So you did anything and everything that you were asked to do that was like legal, at least. I don't remember breaking the law, so that's good. But you did it all, like because that was what you were asked to do. And this was before the whole Me Too thing, so it was like well before that kind of crashed down. And I think they pay their assistants much better now because there was some kind of backlash, but it was a rough life.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I just recently wrote an article about this concept, right, of like the value in work you hate, right? And that there's a I before getting into my gaming career, I was a busboy at a Jewish deli down in Miami where I would get tipped 17 cents on the $1.69 bagel and a schmear, and they would complain about everything, and it was just like I hated that job. But man, it gives me so much respect for servers. It gives me so much, like, whenever I face a problem in my game company, I'm just like, this is fine. Like, I'm not getting up at 4 in the morning and going to serve these people.
You can survive it. And I feel like that today. I honestly wouldn't change where I started because it gave me so much exposure to really talented people that that are still in Los Angeles, is where I live. And it also, it introduced me to Elan. And so that brings me from representation to, I interviewed with Elan we worked for a division of Microsoft at the time that was called Xbox Entertainment. And it was in Santa Monica. And it was like a immersion of like tech people and Hollywood. And so it was like my first interface with someone that was not in the Hollywood space, which was Elan. And he was I was interviewing to be his like coordinator assistant to help him with this interactive division. And I first met him and he was like so soft spoken and like looked me in the face and didn't throw things at me. And
I love how the bar was set so low.
it's very low.
So look me in the eyes and don't throw things at me. This is the man
and
I
he
want to
was
work
like,
with.
he was so, and I was like, oh, I bet this guy never yells, and I've never heard him yell to this day. Like, never heard him raise his voice ever. And I heard him tell the story where he like canceled all his future interviews. I didn't know this, by the way, at the time. Canceled all the future interviews and hired me. And so that was my introduction to him. And we worked for this Xbox Entertainment Studios, which our mandate was making interactive content for the Xbox One. So we were trying to competing with like Netflix and like the streaming services were just kind of coming to be more popular at that point. And we worked there for like a year and a half. It wasn't that long. And then the CEO of Microsoft retired, and then the new CEO came in. And as Microsoft does, they were kind of up and down on what they wanted to commit to. And there was another team, I think, doing exactly what we were doing. So they ended up anyway cutting our whole studio. And so that was
yes. So you're mid project development at that point when your budget gets cut and the whole studio gets laid off?
Yeah. So basically we got told that we could finish our projects, but we had no new projects. And some people were left to work there a couple more months than others, but it was ultimately like, you can come into work, but we're going to shut down this studio at some point in the near future.
That's interesting. So yeah, walk me into that moment for a little bit, because that, you finish the project, then everybody gets surprise laid off is pretty common. You get laid off and the project is completely dead. Of course, happens all the time. This like the status of, hey, we are going to wrap this up, but we're going to let you finish what you're doing is actually pretty rare. I mean, to a certain extent, it sounds kind of nicer, right? Like to me, like it's not a great limbo to be in, but at least you get to finish your project. Like, what was going on there? What was that like to be in that moment?
What was helpful about it is all of us were kind of in the same place. And so everyone was very much helping others try to figure out what came next. And I was devastated because it was one of my favorite jobs that I'd ever had, because I previously came from the other environment.
The bar was set very low.
very low bar. So I was so sad. I remember crying to Elan. I was just so upset. And I thought, like, all my self-worth is tied to this job. So like, what am I going to do next? I can't go back to entertainment. And yeah, I think it felt more like we were all in it together, as opposed to I was just out of a job and like had to figure it out. And while we were coming into the office, Elan and one of our other colleagues, actually, Shane Small, they were playing this card game that was called, I think they were calling it at the time, Bomb Squad. And it was like a poker deck with like Sharpies written, on it. And they would want me to play it. And I'm like, I can't be bothered with this. I have to look for a job. Like, I have this resume I have to build, and I have all these things I need to go do. And Elan was less fearful. I mean, he was, felt confident in his next step. And so we played this game over and over. And then there was like a 2-month period where I was interning back at where I previously went, and Elan went on this Hawaiian vacation, and he met Matt Inman, who's the Oatmeal, who he did not know. It was like a mutual, like serendipitous, like friend group that all went to Hawaii. And I remember the story of them. Everyone's out like boogie boarding and, on, as you do in Hawaii or whatever you're doing on the beach, whatever water activities people have. And
whatever people do out there in Hawaii,
the fun things. And Elan and Matt are sitting in the dark in the hotel room, like playing what became Exploding Kittens, actually. And that was Matt's exposure to like a really, really solid game. And he, had already had this established brand. The Oatmeal had a following, was making some merchandise, but had never made a game. And he was like, this game is awesome, but Bomb Squad is a soulless name. Like, don't call it that. That's terrible. And his birth was Exploding Kittens, because cats, everybody loves cats. Cats are huge on the internet. And let's put some irreverent, juxtaposition where they're blowing things up. And so that was kind of the origin story. And immediately after that, Elan called me and asked, like, do you want to come work at this card game company? And I was like, what? No, I want to go make TV and movies. What are you talking about? Card games? Like, how analog? But I did. I think I was the second employee, and my job title was like producer or project manager or something. And I was in charge of basically getting all the games made. Like where, we had this Kickstarter running and we had to produce, I think we produced over almost 1 million units. And we didn't know that that was weird. We didn't know anything. We had no idea that that was a large number. We had no idea where they were made. We had no idea how to get them from point A to point B, but we had to learn all of those steps. And then I've been here for 10 years.
Okay, so now we're going to dig in. We're going to dig into this part and several other steps along the journey, because this is great. Because I've got, and again, for listeners, I've got 2 episodes with Elan on the podcast where we dig into the marketing and the design and the creation and the Kickstarter itself. But I want to hear digging into exactly this, like the logistics and the behind the scenes and the stuff that actually makes this work. Because I think most people,
all the boring stuff.
No, it's not boring. I tell you, that's why I had like, this is the podcast is think like a game designer, but as I like applying game design and strategy and creation to how you build a business and how you build operations, I think is just as interesting as building the game itself. And it's really important for people to understand. And again, so people don't, just to get like a sense of this, like 1 million to cut. So you came in mid campaign of the Kickstarter campaign,
right when it ended. Right when it ended.
Okay, so it's right, like, oh my God, we've had the biggest success ever, and now we have to actually deliver, right? Which is a really big deal and not easy to do, right? I mean, I remember my first, when I first launched my company and we put Ascension out, I made 10,000 units and I didn't know what I was doing, and that was hard enough. And 1 million units is insanity. And so, what were the processes you take? Because I can imagine somebody else putting themselves in your shoes and you're like, you've never made a physical thing before. You don't know how, you've moved, pixels on a screen, but you haven't used, moved physical matter across the planet. So you're like, I don't know what to do. How do you start? How do you approach a problem like that?
Well, we got a little lucky because we had, Elan was close friends with the guys over at Cards Against Humanity. So they had gone through a similar experience. Their Kickstarter was much smaller than ours, but they had gone through a similar experience, and Elan called them, mid-campaign, because he was like staring at this screen. He had like Post-its all over his computer, like blocking the numbers because he was so stressed out by how is he going to do all this. So he called up, I think, Ben at Cards Against Humanity, and they actually had, a woman that had helped them with basically the full supply chain. She had helped liaise with the factories in China. She had helped spec the products. She had helped, them outline how many games per case, what are the sizes of the cases, like all these things that are very important to like moving inventory, booking the boats, getting them from point A to point B. So we kind of had quite assistance in getting from that start to where do I put it? And they also started a company that was based around Kickstarter fulfillment called Black Box. And so they helped us ship, hundreds of thousands of orders. It was insane. But at one point, I remember this very clearly. I don't know how many boats we had, but we had, thousands of boats with containers on them going all around the world. And I remember, midway shipping things being like, it might be a good idea for me to write down where these units are going. Like it might be at some point necessary to track that on a spreadsheet. This is
clever.
This is clearly like someone who has no idea how to manage inventory, has no concept of like, where does transfer of title happen and where are the units and did the right ones get out the door and go to the right place? Like, there was so much that we didn't know. And we had a lot of challenges. We had a boat that caught fire. We had warehouses lose.
The kittens actually exploded, like for real.
It is not the boat. I don't think ended up sinking, but it had to pull into some kind of port, and there was an investigation that went on. So I promise it wasn't our. It wasn't because of us. So I think that the lesson we had is we had really good advice and help from the day one, and it was all about urgency and working around the clock to make sure that we had the right games go out at the right time. And we delivered it on time. I think the date we shipped was in July and the Kickstarter ended in February. So we actually pulled it off, which was kind of insane. And we had a product afterward for holiday. But thinking back to what I don't know now, it's a miracle that all of this stuff happened the way it did, because it
Well,
was,
Well, yeah, and I mean, so the lesson, one, like, obviously, reaching out to contacts and talking to people who've done this stuff before or something like it before to learn some
mhm.
lessons, but then also, some of this is a lesson, it seems, in as you mentioned, kind of keyword is of resilience, just like, look, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to
Yeah,
go and take the next step and figure it out. Okay, now let's see if I could do this better and figure out the next thing.
yeah,
And I think that's just such a key part of any successful entrepreneur story, business story, is just like, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to do the next thing. And one of the things that Elan prides himself on, his ability to kind of like recognize talent and bring in talent. And your story came up in that context because it's not about necessarily the specific skill set, like, I know how to ship and manage logistics. It's this sort of mindset and
yeah,
attitude of like, all right, I'm going to get things done. And does that feel like, do you see that in other people that he's
100%.
hired? Do you see that as a trend?
Yeah, it's probably a detriment to our company, actually, that we all operate that way. And I think still to this day, it's this startup mentality, right? It's that, like, you're gonna at all costs figure out how to do it, even though you have no idea. And then later on, you discover, okay, it's not my job anymore to be the smartest person in the room. I need to now find smarter people at these things to replace what I'm doing. But when you're in the early days, yeah, you have to just kind of figure it out and learn by making mistakes and learn what worked. And it's exciting. I mean, I love that part of a company because every day is new and every day there's a new challenge. And I think we still operate that way a little bit. And it's because of how Elan and I kind of built the company. It's like this fail fast mentality, which I think is super helpful early on. And then later you learn that, okay, we now need to focus and actually need to build some process, because you can't grow a company like that forever. But such an exciting rush, honestly. Like, it feels, those days feel like yesterday because so much has happened, but also it was like so exciting.
Yeah, so I guess I really want to dig into that transition phase, right? So there's a fail fast, but your company launched massively successful out of the gate with its first product at record setting success. So does that what in what ways did you fail? What were the things that you were failing fast, and how are you recovering from those things in those early days? And then at what point did you then decide, hey, maybe this type of failure is not good anymore? We got to operationalize and fail
Yeah.
less.
So, I mean, a little mistake that I recall, which is a big one when you're thinking about an individual product, is we learned how to write rules, which in a game is very, very critical. Obviously, nobody likes to read rules. I mean, most people don't like to read rules, so it's helpful if you can watch them or somebody who knows how to play a game. But I remember the first set of rules that Elan gave me for Exploding Kittens, and it was like, on a note card that was like this big, and like, I think maybe front and back. And I read it and I was like, I have a lot of questions. I have no idea how to play this one. And so we learned over iteration after, I mean, thousands. It was like, in the early days, you spend so much time and focus on, the one thing you're making. So, which we had to. So we learned that, yes, a note card size, we wanted them to be brief, but that was a little too brief. And so over the years, we've learned, yeah, you have to play test and play test and play test. And I think we need to probably scale it back a little bit in terms of how long our rules are today. But there's clearly a balance between comprehension and, like, is someone going to get through this much text? In terms of bigger things that we've learned, just I wish I could go back to my younger self and remind myself that, like, to slow down is to scale faster. Like, focus is so important, and it's in a startup, and in someone that's like Elan and I, personality type, we love speed. And speed, I think, it's like a drug. It feels like success. And when you're scrappy and agile, it's like the rush that you get. But what I've learned over the years is clarity is really how when we untapped scaling, it was when we got very crystal clear on what our mission was. And sometimes it came by force. Like COVID forced us to scale with our core business and in games because we had no other option at the time. But we tried to do. There was a point where we were trying to do puzzles and different websites to launch games and plush toys and T-shirts and like all different types of products. And some of those had moderate success, but we ended up learning is like we really need to focus on what our actual business is, because if we don't focus on our actual business, there someday could be no business. And so that was a good lesson, I think, as we grew over the past 10 years.
And so how did you figure out that clarity? Was it just that you tried a bunch of different product types in a bunch of different categories and none of them had the success that the games did? And so you said, you know what, let's just double down on games.
Yeah.
Was that what it looked like?
I mean, it happened. There was a lot of, before COVID, we were looking at, for example, we launched a line of puzzles and we were like, we're so clever. We have all this funny art and puzzles are so easy. They're just cardboard. Like it's just like games, but easier. There's no rule set. Like we can do this. And it was a tough category to break into because it's all about like the quickness that you can iterate on trends. So in the puzzle business, there's every couple months there's new images that come out, and that was the speed to market for us was a bit of a challenge. And also I think underestimated. We were trying to innovate this category, and there was like a 3D puzzle line that someone was doing, and someone else was building like different objects, and there was like magic hidden within puzzles. And I think everybody kind of thought like, okay, the puzzle business is growing because at COVID, everyone's stuck at home. But I think we underestimated like the core puzzler. There's a reason why hot air balloons and sunsets on the beach are popular, right? Like it's therapeutic for folks, and our line was, I think, interesting and funny. But didn't move the needle, and we didn't have the scale to continue to push it forward. And at the time, it was a lot of work for us. Like it's just an image, but like the concept of what we wanted to put into it was taking a lot of bandwidth when it was taking away from games. And so there was multiple examples of that. And over time, we just learned that we got to focus on this core business we have, because it's big enough of a business.
Yeah, there was an interesting. I don't know if this is the same for you guys. When I was talking to Peter Atkinson, of the founder of Wizards of the Coast, and he had this line that really stuck with me, where it was like, "Listen, I can't even if I have a business that's making like $10 million a year, the staff I put to that should be put to Magic that's going to make $1 billion a year, and that's not a good idea for even a profitable business line within a company." Which again, for me, I'm a small business owner, a $10 million a year thing is great. I would love that. But like for a company at your scale, it's not. You actually need to kill those things aggressively, which is a really fascinating and counterintuitive result.
Yeah, I wish that we had done. I wish we killed things sooner in those days, because it does, and it escalates, right? Like you think it's just you. Like Elan and I are just brainstorming an idea, and then we want to go concept it, and then we want to have an artist do something, and then we need to sample it, and then we need to have somebody ship the sample to us, and then now you have logistics people involved, and then you have someone that you're like, okay, it's good enough, let's try to sell it, and then you have the sales team involved. So it kind of snowball effects across the whole company, and we, I think, learned that a little too late, and have since been really laser focused and much better at thinking about what's the return on this investment and what's the effort that we're going to put into it. And sometimes you can't convince Elan. It's like he's got a creative idea, he's got to go try it. So I'm not always a success, but and that's good, because that's also brought some great ideas to life. But I try to focus us as much as we can.
Yeah. So I guess, put me in the room there if you can as well, right? Like I think this is a perennial challenge for anybody that's trying to run a business of like, hey, let's calculate the ROI of the given business unit and try to make the decision based on some metrics that we can track. And that's great. But also like when you're trying to innovate and you're trying to build something new and you're trying to go 0 to 1,
Yeah.
there's not, the metrics are made up. Like, let's be honest, like there's not, you're just
That's true.
guessing, right? And so how do you navigate that? How do you decide? What does your conversation with Elan look like? And put me in the
Well,
room with you if you can.
I think it depends on like what project we're talking about. We have, even though both of us come from some type of digital background, we don't do collectively. I'm talking about as a company and the two of us. We don't do that well with digital products at this company. So, and we've tried several, like making our own mobile apps. We ended up having to get someone to commission those for us. Adding digital components to physical games, building different kinds of websites with different features, whether it's collecting consumer data or spitting out something like code or a gift or bonus content or something. Like Elan loves to iterate with those kinds of ideas, and I think we've learned over the years that we're not that good at those things on a scale basis. And so it depends on what the idea is. If it's a physical game and a partnership that's a new partnership, for example, like the Tim Ferriss game that we did, or we did a game with Jeff Probst. We did a Survivor license game. Those were all kind of new ways of working, new ways to collaborate, but it resulted in some type of physical product that we were putting out. And those were great tests because it was a new way to bring a game to a market. And that's, while there's always a learning hurdle with something new, something, you've not done this deal before, or how is it going to work co-publishing a game, or what's the approval process going to be? Those type of experiments, those were both new ideas for us. They tied back to our core business, but when it was something that tied to a digital product, it just we spent a lot of money either hiring somebody and not being able to direct them properly. And so I would basically use that lens when we worked more together about which things to allow innovation and allow Elan's creative mind to run loose and test and learn, or be like, okay, I need to come in and try to end this because it's going to result in too many internal or external resources. And then there's also the lens of, what is my team saying? What is the team around us asking for? And if they are, we have a lot of even resilience and adaptability on our team, just given that most of the core team have been with us for, I don't know, almost 10 years also. So they've seen a lot of these crazy ideas we've pulled off. And when they come to me and they say, Kelly will say, who leads my creative team, I'm really worried about this. Like, I'm worried that we're going to be able to pull this off. That's when I also know, okay, I need to go talk to him about, this bandwidth wise is going to be hard. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, it does. And there's no easy answer, right? And there's a lot of like little threads here, right? Because like, I mean, you guys have innovated on a variety of like interesting components with games, and like the packaging where you'll put like fur on a packaging, or you'll put like some kind of little burrito that you throw inside of a thing, and like it's not just like making, because like Exploding Kittens to some degree is like as easy a product as you could make, right? It's just cards in a box and that's it. But you're like, nope, we're not going to stop there. We're going to make all kinds of weird stuff. And like so you clearly are tolerant of some diversity.
I would say all
risk.
those games that you mentioned, the ones that we have been most successful at, came to birth because one of the creatives, usually it was Matt or Elan, had a very clear vision. And they were not trying to create something because a customer asked us to. I think that is another mistake that we've gotten into and still are in to this day, where we're developing for a specific retailer versus a consumer. And all of those products were some wacky idea, whether they're internal ideas or came from an external inventor, that somebody was like, ooh, I have a good idea. Like, let's put burritos in the box and let's show them through, the front of it because we need to show the characters and what's inside. Or this game is poetry for Neanderthals. This game is taboo. But what would be really funny is if we included an inflatable bat that you have to hit each other with while you try to guess and give clues.
Yeah.
And I think every time we've had a home run, it's not been a forced product. It's been something that someone was creatively inspired by, and there was a champion that got it over the finish line every single time.
Yeah, yeah, no, that tracks with me. I found that the projects that I make because I think it's what the market wants or what I could sell into a mass channel have not generally
Yeah.
been successful. But the ones that I'm like, nope, I really love this thing and I think this would be great.
Great.
Typically do well, and it's a really interesting lesson I
Yeah.
have to kind of keep relearning. So that makes
It's a
sense.
hard circle to I don't know if that's the right, but it's a loop that you get stuck in because you have to when you're a company our size, you have to continue like iterate and make new products because they don't all work. And sometimes there are great ones, and other times you're like, this could have been better,
Yeah.
and it's a challenge of scaling.
Yeah, and so let's pick apart this, and I'll give you a couple of different angles that seem interesting to me. Right, one is the how do you build the sort of institutional resilience to that kind of like failure and learning process, and part of that I'm sure is that you hire for that. Right, that's one side, but maybe there's more to it. Two is you mentioned that there's a this challenge of you and Elan deciding to like explore an idea has all these ripple effects throughout the company and like creates these waves, right? Which is something I can relate to, and that like I've learned I have to be a little bit more careful as like CEO than I am as like core game designer to like shut up and not just share everything that comes to my head, right? I've got to like actually, because if I say something, it leads to all of this disruption, and I have to be very conscious about it. Like, so maybe how do you handle that? And then the third thing,
Mhm.
and you could pick any one of these or all of these if they're of interest, is you mentioned you're taking in the feedback from your team and getting the vibe from your team on like when something's too hard. And do you have formal processes for that, or like how do you manage your information flow down, how do you manage your information flow up,
Yeah.
and how do you train resilience throughout the company? Are the three
Yeah.
threads I would love to pick whichever you want to go with.
Yeah. I mean, yes, we definitely have hired to just to scale and grow, and like the structure that we're building is, hiring people. And in the beginning we hired just friends or friends of friends, or we'd have a job posting, but we weren't necessarily looking for experts in the industry. I don't actually can't recall hiring anybody from games until probably like 5-6 years in, which is, I guess, a little bit strange. And I think sometimes we had the attitude of like having no, not baggage, but like historical knowledge or experience in the industry kind of gave us a competitive advantage because we didn't know what we didn't know. And now looking back on some of these decisions we're trying to make today, I'm like, yeah, there's once you have more information, you're like, oh no, we tried that and it failed, or no, someone else did that and it didn't work. Like it really, restricts you in trying to just try things because you don't know any better. So we kind of, we're proud that we didn't have a lot of, I think, industry experts. But then we got to a critical point where we needed to expand internationally, or we needed some people to actually help Elan make games. And we needed some salespeople, or we needed marketing people to help us figure out the social media hooks. And so we ended up hiring very specifically from really amazing talent across the business to get us to the stage that we're at now. We hired this amazing gentleman. I think you might know him, Yuri, who is our like head of international, and he helped us build out that infrastructure overseas. And today, international business is about 30% of our business from zero. So it was a true learning. I think like when to source internally and when to source externally. I still I still struggle today with like on the creative front, especially like theming and art. Like, do you want people from games? Do you want people not from games? Like, there was a mix, of course, on our team, but um, it's always an interesting conundrum for me because we're trying to be different. I think I forgot the rest of your question.
No, so you talked about like hiring and resil, in the context of sort of resilience and growing the company. But I think it's worth staying here, and then we'll get to the other parts about communicating up and down the chain. But for this, like hiring and scaling has always been fascinating to me. So how many people how big is your company now?
We have about 70 people today.
Okay.
And distributed across the country and some international.
And so the hire smart friends, hire and filter for people are resilient. And this is another one of the advantages of like, work you hate is you mentioned it, but I didn't reemphasize it, that like you find the people that you can rely on. Like my first like game design job was at Upper Deck in San Diego, and like there was a lot of problems with that company. Like now legally documented problems, like very bad situation for a lot of reasons. But I learned the people that I could rely on, that when the shit was hitting the fan, these are the people who really care about making a good product. These are people who are not just going to cover their ass, but actually like you could rely on to get things done and move forward. And those were exactly the people I hired when I started my company. Those are exactly the people I partnered with down the road. And so there's a lot of value there. So that's like the kind of low-hanging fruit, like recruiting, and them, you validated them, you vetted them, you've got a relationship. But then once you're scaling beyond the friends and friends of friends, like I've single digit people I've hired that didn't come from that network that have worked out successfully. Like it's very hard. So how do you succeed at that scale? Like what happens there?
I mean, we have a more rigorous, I would say it's not super rigorous, but we have a more rigorous hiring process now. I'm a really big, we are big fans of Patrick Lencioni over here. So I don't know if you've ever read any of his leadership books, but he has several that coach you on how to interview, how to do like extreme referencing. And so I think it depends on the role. But the attributes he talks about in some of these books are more soft skills than they are hard skills. And I find that you can usually do a pretty good job of sussing out somebody's hard skills through, can they technically do the job through some kind of case study or tests that you want to give them when you're hiring, or through extreme referencing, like making sure that you're asking the right questions, checking beyond the references that they're giving. But the soft skills are much harder to get through in a 30-minute, hour, 2-hour, whatever interview. And so we have all these like different questions that we have listed in documents that basically are trying to get us to determining, is somebody smart, not intelligent from like an IQ standpoint, from like a people like EQ standpoint. Like, is this person an asshole? Sorry, can I say that word?
Yeah.
Is this person a jerk? And so smart, hungry, and humble are the 3 words that we're looking for. And we want to have all 3 of those. And once we started looking at hiring from that lens, it also allowed us to look internally and be like, okay, are these like the values that we're attributing when we're reviewing people for performance? Like, we want to make sure that you're not just good at your job, but that you are a decent person and an enjoyable person to work with. Like, this is a team for a reason. It's not about a singular individual. And so I think that really helped us figure out the type of culture and the type of leadership and the type of people we wanted on our team. And it might sound basic, but it's really, really hard to find. It's really hard to suss out. And I try to every year or two, like reiterate it with my team on like the qualities that we're looking for. Cause sometimes you're just like, this person's great. They have their resume has got all of these things. They've got CPG, they've got big company, they've got startup, they've got it all. And that is not enough for me. That is not enough, because one toxic person disrupts the entire company. It is 100% true. I've seen it time and time again. And so I'd rather have someone that has less experience, honestly, for the job, but is like a better teammate than somebody who checks all the boxes. And yeah, I think at some point you realize, we had we had an accounting team for a while that was like Elan's personal, finance person. Like they're not as equipped to
Yeah.
managing millions of units of inventory throughout the world and how to track it and the depreciation value and overstock and all of that. So eventually you kind of learn the hard way through either audits or whatever financial ups and downs that like, you really got to clean up some areas and make sure that you're hiring the right expertise. So yeah, I don't know if I can tell you like what stage is the good stage to stop hiring friends and start hiring experts, but I can say that the you'll probably learn the answer too late.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, and yeah, I mean, like, I think you should feel the pain of like, of
Yeah.
hiring, before you like have to go down that road. Like, I always feel like, you want to be like, I want to be like 10% understaffed at any given time. Like, I'd rather like be in a world where we all have to like push to make things happen
Mm-hmm.
than a world
Yeah.
where, we're overstaffed or overhead starts to become more of an
No, it's a
issue, or you're
balance.
just like, yeah. So there's
Yeah.
a certain degree, where I think that's important. And this is from running a company where I've made the mistake on the other side, and
Yeah. I mean, same
overhead
here.
didn't keep up, and that's not
Yep.
a good place to be.
Yeah.
So just before I move on from this topic, because I had not heard of
Yeah.
Patrick Lencioni, but I'm intrigued if there was a book or starting point or something from that person, or a key lesson from them that's that you would just leave us with, so the audience can follow
My
up and I can
favorite
follow up.
book My favorite book by Patrick Lencioni is The Ideal Team Player. So that's where they talk about the different attributes of team dynamics. There's another really good book that he writes called Death by Meeting. I'm sure we've all been there.
Yeah.
Which just talks about like the types of meetings. I mean, especially during COVID and after COVID, I feel like every company's got this like, remnants of all of these meetings that we had and we still do, given like this hybrid world that we're working in.
Mm-hmm.
And are those meetings generating the outcome that is desired? Most of the time, they're not. Most of the time, one person's talking the whole time and everyone else is emailing or whatever they're doing, and it's
Right.
not driving the business forward. So he's the reason I like Lencioni is they're really short. The books that he writes are short and they're all fables. So there's some fake story that he tells you, and it just helps you remember. Like you're like, oh, that guy, that Ted guy, he was a jerk in that book. And so like you learn the lesson. So it's not just a heavy dialogue script that's like feels textbooky.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm a big fan of his.
Great. Okay, cool. Thank you. I like having new rabbit holes to dive down myself. Okay, so then the other threads I left you that we could go down. If not, I'm going to jump to Netflix. Is how you manage your communication or lack, or preventing the kind of the infection of random idea from you or Elan, rippling through the company, or how do you manage that? Or vice versa, how do you best ensure that you still take the pulse of a company, right? Because once you grow, you're 20 people, maybe even as many as 30, like you kind of know everybody, you can kind of get a sense of what's going on. When you're at 70, that's way out the window. So how do you manage, learning when there's problems in the company or people aren't happy with something, and how do you manage that up? So either up or down communication. If you've got anything there, then we'll talk about that, or we can move on to Netflix stuff.
So the up or down communication, I think taking the pulse of the company and like, how do you know, whatever, there's a problem, there's not a problem. I think that's probably an easier one for me. I think it's all about the people under you. Like there's a leadership team that surrounds me, and it took me a long time to figure out that I don't need to do everything myself. I am proud of the fact that I started as a producer and then built my way up to all these other roles. So I did almost every job, not that I was an expert in any of them, but I started in supply chain, production, to sales, to some creative element, to marketing, was really bad at that, to accounting and finance, was also terrible at that, to some people or HR roles. And I think it made me learn a lot about what I don't want to do individually, but also how to find the right people to do those jobs. And it took me a little time to figure out that I really don't need to do them all myself. Like the job is about delegation and empowering the team around you. And for someone like me who is a tried and true perfectionist, and I'm not saying that that's a good thing necessarily at all, it really, I think, holds a lot of leaders back from growth. You fear that everything has to be perfect, and it's not about being perfection. It's not about being perfect. It's about moving forward and making sure the team knows what good enough looks like. Like, we're in a startup environment. We don't have time for everything to be spell checked in emails, for example. Let's try to make sure the rules are spell checked and not spell accommodate wrong, which I'll never forget was our spelling error on the front of the Exploding Kittens box years ago. When we made a million units, we missed an M. But it's about building the team around you and trusting them to understand when to elevate things. And it sounds so basic and so simple, but it is so difficult to do and to do well, and then to live by that script, right? Like, you have to let your team make some decisions sometimes, and you're like, well, that wasn't the one I would make, but that's how they learn, just the way that I did when I was learning the space. So trust your team and let them fail.
Oh yeah, I can relate to both how true this is and how freaking hard it is. Like, because you think they're doing the wrong thing. You know better. You should. This is the thing. You could just tell them what to do, but if you do that, you're crippling your team. And every now and then, it turns out they were right and you were wrong. I mean, it's rare in my case, obviously, but every now and then they are. Yes. But it's how they learn, right? And then them being empowered is a key to you growing as a leader, and you being able to like move on and handle more things and increase your kind of zone of control and what types of things you can do.
Yeah.
Do you set any? Are there any specific metrics, or do you use like KPIs to measure performance? Is there any, like, how do you like know if they're doing a good job or a bad job? Or you just, once you've hired them, you got to trust them, assuming the wheels don't come off the wagon?
Yeah, I wish that was true. Sometimes the numbers speak for themselves. So like, if someone's in sales, you're like, okay, it's very visible that you're delivering, right? But it's not just about short-term performance. In fact, you can have years where you're like, ooh, this is going to be a tough next year to comp, or like, is this person just driving and not thinking about the long term? Like, we're going to have to grow this business next year. So let's think about, is this the right move, whether we're going to have overstock inventory or whatever the situation is. But no, the principle that we live by, and that I feel like is one of the best lessons I learned just through like professional coaching, is two-way feedback. We are very, very adamant and big on, not sweeping it under the rug. It is the easiest thing to do is just, okay, well, someone made a mistake. I'm too uncomfortable to talk to them about what happened. And so I'm just going to let this one slide. And then eventually something blows up and you just can't control yourself because you're so mad. We should never get to that point. That is lessons, by the way, learned from Hollywood, which was, I don't know that there was any productive feedback in my assistant days. And you have to just learn by doing, and no one's really coaching you. And that's not okay with me. We have regular one-on-ones with managers and direct reports every week. And they're not just like, okay, how's the expense report going? Or did you deliver the sample to the retailer on time? No, it's like, how are you showing up at your job, at your communication, at your soft skills? Where do you need help? What are the growth objectives that you have? And we get into like really sticky conversations that when you first started, it feels uncomfortable. And then once you are able to have more of them, you developed a trusting relationship with the other person. And it should go both ways. Like, it's not like I'm the only one giving the feedback. Like, I can also be an asshole. So please tell me if I'm, showing up below the line, which means like, you're at your worst, you're operating from fear, you're treating someone with disrespect. Like, we all make mistakes. We all mess up. I think it's the important part is like when we can own up and apologize and own your stuff, like own the stuff that you want to grow at, because, I didn't get here by just knowing that I was right all along. Like I got here from making a lot of mistakes and people telling me that I could be a jerk.
And is there some specific structure to these one-on-ones? And you seem really nice to me, just so you know.
Not
Um,
always.
but the so the both, is there like a structure to the one-on-ones, like a series of questions that you ask, or a specific way that you do it to get to evoke this? How do you create this with a, in reverse too? It's a lot of times very hard for a direct report to give you critical feedback on
Yeah.
your on their boss or whatever. So
Yeah.
like how do
Yes.
you build that? What makes that work?
I think it comes from leadership top down, first of all. Like the executives or the leadership team, whoever's running the company, need to, live it. They need to exhibit it and show it and talk about it. We actually hired somebody several years ago to coach everybody. So there was like a leadership level session, and then there was a individual contributor session. So everybody was coached on how to have productive one-on-ones and what that looks like, and what kinds of we had like sample questions because it can be uncomfortable, right? And I think once you educate the whole team on how you expect them to show up, and that this is the norm, that we expect people to challenge their leaders and vice versa, it becomes more commonplace. But it's not perfect by any means. Like it's almost like we need to have a regular reminder. In fact, this is reminding me that we need to do this again this year as I'm
Yeah.
talking to you.
Yeah, no, and this is. I mean, first of all, that principle is important to emphasize for everybody that's listening, right? It's like none of this is perfect. Whenever you build these processes and systems and values, they decay by default. So you have to refresh them and recognize when they're not serving you anymore. Like that is a never-ending process. I've been doing my company for 15 years. You guys have been doing this for 10. It doesn't change. It doesn't change no matter your scale, your size, or whatever.
Leadership is repetition. Somebody told me that leadership is repetition one time. I don't remember what book that was in, but it is such a tried and true. Like, because you're like, sometimes I'm like, I said this. Isn't no one listening to me? Like, I said this thing. It's like people are doing 100 things. Like, you have to repeat it over and over again, and because we're so busy, and with distractions and technology, like you're listening to somebody on a Zoom meeting, and like you missed the nuance and the details of what they're saying. So we have to repeat it over and over. I agree.
Yeah, and I think that I think it was Danny Meyer, the guy that created Sage Text, that talks about that he'll constantly create like repetitions and like mantras and like rhyming reminders and things, like to get it over and over and over again. In order for something to be a value, you have to hammer it home over and over and over and over again. So that makes sense. And then you said you had sample questions and that you had everybody coached. Was this just like a specific like a leadership or a landmark thing, or is it what is there some specific set of this, or just changes?
We use this woman. I forget what her company is called, but her name is Nicole Sanchez, and she was a coach, or she was a teacher for one of my employees at Berkeley, and I met her on a Zoom call. This is when we were all remote, so it was like during COVID. And we were looking for ways to bring, the team together and also teach. And so it was one of the best sessions we ever had. She gave us, I think she's still doing it. She gave us it's a very simple worksheet that was like asking people questions like, what were some quick wins this week? What are your blockers? What feedback did I give you? What feedback do you have for me? And then at the very bottom of the whole worksheet, I remember, is a section called vacation time ? Like, when are you going to take your time off? Because I think us Americans, like, we live to work. We're just, all we're doing is working all the time. And if you are, you need to set the expectation that, like, yes, it's good to take time off, but even sometimes that's not enough for the team, especially if they're just so dedicated to a mission or to a project or whatever. So Nicole Sanchez, she was a lifesaver and cannot recommend her more.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you for that. And I really do feel like this is like a little mini leadership masterclass we got going on here. So it's fantastic. uh, so now I want to tie a couple other threads together here because
Yeah.
um, one, you talked about really focusing in on the stuff that you're good at and letting go of puzzles and shirts and various other random digital games. And then you decided to make a Netflix show with exploded kittens. So
Yes.
that feels like a little bit of a diversion, but it's also really cool. I mean, I have been wanting to do like a little animated series of my game Ascension forever, and have gone down, had some conversations with different folk, but it never kind of goes anywhere. So talk to me about that decision, that process, like what made this thing come to life?
Yeah. So it definitely is a departure. I mean, being as a company founded in LA, I think we were always on a train to try to make some kind of video content from whatever we created. And Exploding Kittens was uniquely positioned. There's a lot of games, I think, with character driven IP, but at the time there wasn't a ton. I'm trying to think of another one off the top of my head. So we knew that there was like a world that we could build, and there was like a tone and like a vibe to the game that we could probably try to translate, or that might be interesting to watch. And Matt is a illustrator and online comic, and so it lended itself pretty well to like an adult animation style. So it was always on the back of our minds. It took us a long time to get to that point. I mean, the company's 10 years old, and for the first 5 years, we were like, should we do this? How do we do this? Matt wasn't that excited because he couldn't really think up like a storyline. And then we took on a minority investment from an LA private equity growth capital firm called the Chernin Group back in 2019. And Peter Chernin used to run Fox. And so is one of the most noteworthy people in the entertainment business. And he had a first look deal, I think at the time, or was just starting one with Netflix. And so helped us kind of put the whole structure together. I would like to say that like, this was really difficult, and it was to get to this point. But like once he came into the partnership, he unlocked a lot of doors with the name, and then introduced us to Greg Daniels of Parks and Rec, and Mike Judge, you probably know from Silicon Valley, Beavis and Butthead, and they were starting a animation house together, production company together. And so them partnered with Matt, who just really wanted to get into more longer form content. He'd been writing short form videos. He worked on some animation he worked on Life of Pets with Illumination and some other stuff. So had gotten a taste of that business, had really wanted to kind of create something. And so the challenge we had was like the game, there's a kind of a universe, but there's all these like non sequitur jokes and characters that don't really like translate across cards, basically. Like these cards have characters on them, like Taco Cat is one of the characters, or Zombie Cat, or Catermelon. There's a lot of fruits apparently in foods that are cats.
Foods and
anyway,
cats is a pretty, yeah, I've noticed a theme in Matthew's work, but yeah.
he's just inspired by, I don't know, what anthropomorphic cats, I guess. Anyway, so he was trying to figure out like what world they can live together, and nothing really made sense. And so he basically created something new. And the show was, I mean, I don't know how he thinks of these things. Like this is a world in which I will never be able to do what he and Elan do. Where like they birth these crazy, wacky ideas, and I'm like, where did you come up with that? And it's so brilliant. And it's just not a side of my brain that I have. So I will stick over here to the operational boring things that you say are not boring, but are much more boring than that. And he was just inspired to make something that turned our, flat 2D thing into something that was had a world and character behind it, and he really ran with it. And I think the lesson the thing that we were at the time, we were really excited. I mean, it's fantastic to get a show on Netflix, right? Like, what a triumph. I think the things that we learned are was there enough tying back into the universe? I don't know how we would have done it, like to translate back to physical games. Is that doable or not? Would it have helped us with marketing? Maybe. And it's also, there's so much content. I mean, every day there's more stuff being released, whether it be on Netflix or Amazon or Paramount or whatever. So there's just so much that lives in the world. And I think one of my questions is like, should we have started with even more short form, like YouTube content before going all the way to a TV series? I mean, I don't regret anything that we did. I just think there's some questions on like the sequencing of where we got to from today to then.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, of course, getting this thing made and having it exist at all, huge triumph. But when you think about it from the business perspective, did it, doesn't sound like it moved the needle a ton on physical product sales. The question is where does that land? And I went through this. I don't remember how many years ago it was now, quite a few. We had Ascension was a major part of a major motion picture called The Good Boys, which was a Seth Rogen produced thing. And we were a huge part of that movie. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is amazing. We're blowing up now. We're in theaters. Right? I got my name in the credits. So this is going to be so cool. Like near zero impact on sales. Like none. Like just couldn't have mattered less. Cool. Really excited. Glad I was a part of it. Regret nothing. But
very similar experience. And this is something that takes 5 years to make. I don't know if it should have taken that long because there was COVID in the middle of it and writer strikes and things like that. But yeah, it's a huge undertaking. And I think I'm still trying to figure out like, what are the right layers? You build this community and they really like your product. And how do you translate that to a lifestyle brand or a consumer brand, or like, what are the stages and steps that you take from where you are in your core category space to becoming more broad? It's a big challenge, and but it's a fascinating problem to solve.
Well, let's talk about that then, because I think there's the question of like, what do you want, right? Like, what you've reached a level of success that most people only dream about. You've conquered the world with crazy products that you could just create whatever the heck you want. And now but there's now you want more, right? Do we want to be a lifestyle brand? We want to be something that's everywhere, everything everywhere all at once. You took in investment, like a lot of investment from major players in the space that then gain. Now I assume that there's a board that you have to answer to in some form or another. And there's different, that like you're trading some of that freedom and that creativity. And the thing that you mentioned was like the joy of a startup and the fast move it and do whatever you want for these, these bindings of a variety of different types that let you scale. But like, what is it that you want? And how do you talk about this with Elan? How do you make these kinds of decisions? You could do whatever you want, but why this? Why what? Why next?
I think Elan's first, I remember the first email he sent me, by the way, before I even started, he said, it was titled Slot Machine. And he said, can we figure out how to make Exploding Kittens into a slot machine? And that was all he wanted from like the first, and we did not do it. So I failed at that. But he, it was very passionate about,
it's not too late
about making slot machines. And I think from the beginning of the company, we had very big like ambitions, to, the ultimate dream, I think, was to have our own theme park. Like not a ride in a theme park, but like we have our own theme park. So that's where I think we still want to go. Are we going to get there? I don't know. But yes, you're right. Like you take on investment, you take on boards, and there's, expectations for more. And you have to constantly be battling with like, not exploiting the brand in the wrong way, not taking short-term bad decisions just to make a buck. Like we're not in the business to do that at all. But I think we still want to see these characters live on, right? I mean, the world is so unique and weird. And I really do feel like it's so evergreen. The characters and like just the stories and these one panel, jokes that Matt has created are universal, I think, in terms of demographic, gender, age. I mean, you probably don't want your 5-year-old, but looking at them, but like, there is this like touching weird, but like softness about what he creates that is so relatable. So I think I don't know exactly the right steps to get there. It's something that we're still figuring out. And I think right now we're exploring like what kind of partnerships do we want to take, whether it be video content, whether it be other categories, whether it be just expanding into different countries, right? Exploding Kittens is the company's name, but it's also the core franchise. And so I think the element that we want to make sure we pay the most attention to, that back to my focus lesson earlier, that I think even within our own category of games, we have lost some focus on is Exploding Kittens, because it is it's started the company and it is the company. And if we lose that, ultimately you lose the company. And so that is our current mission and focus. And we'll still be making burritos and, Neanderthals and happy salmons and whatever. But we really want to, make sure we're doing justice to the brand and to this universe that we've created that's so beloved by us internally and by the community that got us here. So
yeah. No, that makes sense. And I just, so I have a sense of it, like what's like in terms of breakdown of like how much of the company, current kind of sales revenue is Exploding Kittens and its derivatives versus other stuff.
Yeah. So Exploding Kittens is probably a little less than half of the overall company. And that includes not just like the original game, but we've got the zombie kittens,
72
and
expansions
the
or whatever.
And a lot of different expansion packs and bundles and stuff like that. And so there's a board game that just came out this season. So that includes like all of that content together.
Okay. And so what does when you say you want to, really focus on that brand, what does that look like then? Does that mean it's growing to be 70% of the business? Does that mean it just has a plan? What is growing, putting focus on that mean?
There's definitely some dollar goals that we have. I don't know that the ratio of the entire business is, I guess, necessarily. I would like the whole thing to grow. I would like it all to grow.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. You want all bigger.
But I want it all, right? Remember, back to focus. This is why.
Yeah.
This is why it's so difficult, right? I'm like internally battling with it myself. So I think it really comes down to like honestly internal. Like we need one person internal that just owns it. Like big companies have these brand or franchise managers. We don't have that setup. So we want to start by trying to like orchestrate a setup where the team is driven by individual or internal performance goals around the brand, whether that be sales by channel or by geo or by SKU type or whatever. But we also, going back to your Netflix question, I do feel strongly that video has something to do with it. I think that like you watch social media, right? These influencers that we follow, right? We watch online because we're curious about the archetype or the character or what are they going to do? Are they going to get married? Oh my gosh, they broke up. Oh my gosh, now they're having a little dog in Paris. I'm referring to somebody that I follow clearly. So anyway, so you're invested. You're invested in like their life and what they're doing. Similar to, scripted content. And these characters that you see that we've created, that we have names for and visuals, and they've got little side quests and things. So I do feel strongly that like video has something to do with the affinity that you have for something, for a character, a brand, or whatever. It's all this narrative that we're like, obsessed with, this stream of content. And so I do think that there's something coming in the future. Probably more on a short form basis, like minutes, not, hours long. And I think that is probably the next stint that we'll do with EK, the franchise. I don't know where, I don't know when. And I'm just invested in building these worlds up to, see where that takes us. I wish I had some long-term grand plan that I'm like, year 1 is this, and year 2 is this, and year 3 is this. And I don't know. We're getting better at thinking more long term, but I also don't want to force the creative to just be scripted out, because I feel like then we'll get less genuine content. And I'm
Mm.
not just talking about video, I'm just talking generally like the plans. We're always going to make games. We're always going to have, sequels to Exploding Kittens coming out. But what form it takes in the future, I would like it to happen more exploratory than forced, I guess.
Sure, that makes sense. And just because we're talking about video creation and content creation stuff, and this has been top of mind for me, is that I see AI videos flooding my feed now, and that process is taking over. Do you have any thoughts on how AI is influencing the future of the creative business, or have you guys incorporated anything or experimented with that at all?
So, this is a world in which, I am no expert at all. I use AI every day, but I use it as like a resource tool. Like, how, did this thing do? Or I want to look up games, or I want to look up, information about something that I'm stuck on. We do use it. We use it for like rule vetting, and it's actually been super helpful in getting us like a first draft of like a rule set, because like you take, other rules that we've written, and here are the basic outlines of this game. And like, it's never something that we use ultimately. We have to like edit it and play test it and et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know. I think that's a hugely powerful tool. And I feel like I'm, an imposter syndrome here trying to like answer this question. But
everybody does. It's why I ask it a lot in my interviews these days. And I mean, I have had AI experts on the podcast before, but for the most part, we're all struggling to figure out our way through it. And it's evolving so fast, and there's ethical considerations with it, but it's obviously very powerful, but it also hits walls where it's really stupid sometimes, and like just trying to find that edge is not easy. I would just
like it to tell me if it's lying. Like, just tell me if you don't know the truth. Like, don't make me have to say, I'm sorry, are you lying right now? Like, that is just
no, it's a big problem.
But I think what I will say is, like, I'm not against it. I'm very open to technology improving our way of life and our working conditions 100%. And I talk to Elan actually a lot about it often, because he is, a technology pioneer. He's the first person to use whatever the thing is that becomes available. And I always ask him, like, how are you using this? Is this ready? Like, and some of his advice to me is like, it's all in the prompts. It's all in figuring out the exact right prompt to give it and the structure of the output you want. And I think that we're going to go through a lot of probably painful learnings over the next however many years in all sorts of industries, like attempting to figure out how to use it best. And it's exciting, but I also feel like someone smarter than me has to kind of coach me how to use it correctly, so that
well, and what I found is like that part, like the ease of use part, is just getting better and better every day. Like, it used to be a year ago, you had to be very, very particular with prompting to get any kind of reasonable output. And now, like, yes, better prompting helps, but it's so much better just like knowing what you want. And there's a lot of like tools going on in the background. So it's a fascinating space. Don't have the answers either. Just that's why I like to have the conversations.
It's a good question.
Okay, so we're getting towards the end here. So I think, listen, you twice in this conversation, you described your work as boring, and I think it's important to push back, right? Because a lot of people who like, they look at the, I'm the creator, the designer, the artist, the whatever, and that's like the sexy front facing roles. But I think, it's come out over the course of this conversation. I think to anybody listening, there's like a lot of really interesting problem solving. There's a lot of interesting learning and growth and things that come from building the game of business correctly and understanding the rules of the game of business correctly, because you get to make it up. It really is designing your own game, designing your own universe. And so I think for somebody else, and also frankly, if you want to get into games, right, it's a lot easier if you're the kind of person that's willing to do this kind of work, because it's less sexy on its face, because it's got, there's that's one of the best ways to get into the game industry, right? You got out of the Hollywood assisted space to get into this because of that resilience. So is there, advice that you would have for somebody else out there that might be suffering as an assistant right now, or suffering as a busboy right now, and wants to get their foot in the door here? Or like, what advice would you have for someone that maybe was just starting and wanted to kind of get potentially follow in your footsteps?
So you're right. And I want to clarify, I have never been bored. So just to state it, I have never been bored in this job, and I think that's what makes it so interesting, sometimes frustrating, but it honestly is it's been an amazing experience for me. Just how much knowledge I've gained and how much learning and things I never thought that I would have to learn, like VAT and how do you manage that with international sales. I don't know what, like just there's hundreds of examples. Okay, somebody's starting off in maybe games. I think kind of it goes back to the advice I was telling myself, which is focus. I think you don't need to make 100 games. Like I would start with one. Like I mean, when we started, it was Exploding Kittens, and that was all we did. We focused on this one product for months and months, and it was more than months, it was almost a year, just to figure out, like, how do we do this? Like, I was talking about the index card, that rule set that was on an index card. We obsessed over that for days and days and days, to the point where I was like, Elan, I need to go do something else because I can't read anymore. I'm not learning anything. This says the same thing. So yeah. I think focus on your game, like your passion. I was talking about the fact that we've never made a game because someone has told us you need a $9.99 card game to fit on a retailer shelf. Like that's never birthed innovation. It's always been someone has an idea, they're passionate about it, they're the champion of it, and they obsess over it, and they watch people play, and they take notes on what people are doing, and they play it themselves hundreds and hundreds of times, because it's like, this is the product you're going to put out in the world. And it starts with the product. Like everything else will come later, but ultimately you have to have a good idea. You have to have a good concept, or someone does. And in this case, it was Elan and Matt. And then I came on board to do all of the other elements of it, and hired well across the board. So I think, yeah, focus on, you just need one to start with. And do that really, really well and learn as much as you can.
Okay. Focus on one thing that you're passionate about, play test the hell out of it, learn as much as you can along the way. Those are pretty good tips, I think, whether it be for games or probably any other aspect in life, to be honest. So Carly, thank you so much for taking the time. This was wonderful. I have a bunch of notes and follow-up reading to do here, so I got a lot of value out of it. I know my audience will, so I look forward to the next time we get to do this, hopefully in person.
Thank you so much. You were wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you want to support the podcast, please rate, comment, and share on your favorite podcast platforms, such as iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever device you're listening on. Listener reviews and shares make a huge difference and help us grow this community, and will allow me to bring more amazing guests and insights to you. I've taken the insights from these interviews, along with my 20 years of experience in the game industry, and compressed it all into a book with the same title as this podcast, Think Like a Game Designer. In it, I give step-by-step instructions on how to apply the lessons from these great designers and bring your own games to life. If you think you might be interested, you can check out the book at thinklikeagamedesigner.com or wherever fine books are sold.